Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Friendly Ex-Muslim podcast. I'm your host, Abdullah Samir. We are now on episode 90, and today I'm joined by Debbie. Debbie and me actually have an interesting connection, which I will now tell you guys. I was surprised to find that the the very person I'm interviewing today was someone that knows a Muslim that I was debating with. So I'm just going to introduce the backstory here. Going back to 2015, I guess, 2016, around this time when I left Islam, I was talking to a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir. His name, I won't say his name. So this individual who I was talking to, he and I were debating. So for those of you who don't know, what is Hizb ut-Tahrir? Hizb ut-Tahrir is an Islamist organization, an organization that wants to bring back the caliphate, right? So you'd wonder, well, didn't someone bring back the caliphate, i.e. ISIS? Well, they have a different interpretation of how the caliphate should be or whatever. But they want to bring back the caliphate in all of its horror, meaning, all of the hudud punishments, meaning like chopping off hands, apostate killing, all of that fun stuff. They want it all back. So I was discussing with this person. Hizb ut-Tahrir has an interesting way of doing things in that they like to debate, they like to engage, they like to attack, they like to heckle Muslim speakers at the event. So they'll show up at like Muslim events and they'll start arguing with them. A lot of fun stuff. So it turns out this very person who told me that by leaving Islam, I'm going to end up homeless, destitute, addicted to drugs, living on the street. The same person who said this to me, it turns out his own wife left Islam. So this is going to be a very interesting story, and we'll try not to get into too personal details. So if I ask you anything that's like not you don't want to talk about, feel free just to say I don't want to talk about that. Did I describe Hizb ut-Tahrir correctly? You were,
Yep.
I guess you were a part of it as well, sort of?
Yeah. I participated as much as I could. I didn't become a full member because as soon as you do, then you're really responsible for a lot of things. And I had no time because I was just having lots of children.
Yes, you were doing the ideal Muslim wife role, which is having kids, taking care of kids and all that, right?
Yep, exactly.
So let's go back to the beginning. Like, it turns out you actually you're not just the ex-wife of this individual we're talking about, but you also know my wife. You spoke to her before.
Yeah, I became friends with her on Facebook before I left. My ex wanted me to become friends with her and like meet up with her to, be a good influence in her life because I guess he had been arguing with you and didn't like that. But so we were just Facebook friends as converts kind of thing.
Yeah, so basically he wanted you to save her from the evil Murtad.
Yeah.
Because I was a lot. I've seen this a lot. Like when it's not. I mean, people are not usually public because of this reason. But in this case, you had a dynamic where you had like a public apostate with a Muslim woman, and so you had a lot of white knighting going on. You had a lot of Muslim men that wanted to jump in and save her from me. Right? Wanted to save. And I'm actually wondering if you might have actually gone through some similar situation, but because you're the woman, it'd be a little bit different. In my case, she had people like Muslim women telling her to leave me because, well, obviously she's supposed to leave me because of the whole you can't be married to a non-Muslim,
right?
But on top of that, because of the kids. So these Muslim women who were friends of my wife were thinking, well, you should leave him because he's a bad example for the kids. What I didn't understand, and I still don't get it, is I would still be a part of the lives. I'm still the biological father, and I have every right to see them and to be a part of their lives and to parent them. So I guess from their perspective, maybe they're thinking if she was with another Muslim man and I was a little bit more distant, there'd be more power over the kids in terms of shaping them. I think in my case, I'm lucky because the kids were, relatively young still, so still open-minded. I find that when kids are a little bit older, say in the like teens, late teens, like
Yeah.
17, 18, and the Muslim, it becomes much harder to detach from that. And that's what I've heard from friends like Hassan Radwan and others, that, with older kids, a lot of the times when the parents or one of the parents leave Islam, kids are confused, but a lot of times they just remain Muslim. Whereas when they're younger, they're still not totally, their minds are not totally made up yet. And that's how we are as human beings, right? Like the reason why most people follow a religion is because their parents made them into that religion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You grow up as a Hindu, or you grow up as a Christian or a Muslim, typically because your parents told you this is what you're going to follow. So after that, we obviously do that for a reason. We think this is best for our kids, so we're teaching our kids that, oh yeah, there's only one God, or God is in all of these different manifestations, or God came down as a man. We're trying to do what's best for our kids, what we think is best for our kids, but at the end of the day, that a lot of times, even if it's wrong, it's very difficult to get rid of that sort of brainwashing, right? Yeah. So in your case, you were born into a Mennonite family?
Yeah, my family's Mennonite.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
My parents grew up like Mennonite, with horse and buggy and no electricity. They grew up in villages in Mexico. Actually, there's a lot of colonies throughout South America and Mexico.
Oh yeah.
So they were born there, and they migrated to Canada, and they raised us like in the city. So they wanted to give their kids a better life, so they came here and learned English and stuff. But the religion was still a big part of our family, so we went to church and learned the Bible and stuff.
So would you consider yourself to have been like a religious? I guess Mennonite's a Christian, right? So
yeah,
Christian?
Yeah, it's like Lutheran kind of thing. They broke off. They're like the pacifists, so they don't believe in joining any army or being part of any wars, like under any circumstance. So they're just very peaceful and want to keep to themselves, kind of thing.
So you were, living your life as would you consider yourself to be been practicing, or was it more like, oh yeah, this is just something that I was raised in?
Yeah, kind of that, and we would just like do the holidays and go to church on Sundays sometimes. I became more religious as a teenager. I started going to church on my own and joining all kind of activities, and ended up joining an evangelical church and things like that, and went on to Bible college after high school and everything.
Oh, you really dive deep into the whole
thing. And that's how I ended up leaving Christianity, is when I started learning how the Bible actually is not this magical book that formed. So yeah, I left Christianity after Bible college. I took a year of that, and everything fell apart. I wasn't really atheist, only that I had just left my religion. So I really fully intended to learn about other religions too, but I was done with like throwing everything into Christianity. So that's during that search is when I met my ex, who was a very, very practicing Muslim at the time and working for this organization. So I guess that aspect of it intrigued me. So I decided to learn about this religion that I knew nothing about.
Oh, interesting. Can you say how you met? Is that?
Yeah, we met on a dating website. So I guess, Muslims do it too. But he was very clear when we met in person that he's a Muslim and they don't really date. So, what Muslims do is they meet up and talk about marriage. I was like,
that is different, because I was taught as a Muslim, you have to go to the parents. You don't go and meet people directly, because of the inherent risks of like, falling for someone or something like that, right?
Yeah. But I think there's different rules though when Muslim men go for non-Muslim women. So this is what I'm learning, is that there's like different rules. Like they, kind of like a lot of things go out the window when they're dealing with non-Muslim women for some stupid reason. Of course, like everything's for the man in that religion.
Yeah.
But yeah. so that's what got me on the path of learning about that religion. And he was very active, like doing his stuff is like a lot of debates, with public debates and lectures at the universities where they like publicize it, talk about the war and how, you know, the West is attacking Muslims on purpose. And, you know, just this kind of history that I was never taught. So I was very intrigued with learning like the other side of things. So there was many things that really led me to it. And I found some like fancy websites like explaining Islam and all the scientific miracles. And, you know, so I was like, wow, these are all these things that, you know, Christianity didn't have. That it's very clear, you know, you don't have to like doubt anything. Everything is very clear. So yeah, I decided to go for it and thought, you know, I could see where this goes. But this was like a year after I had met him. We had met up, and then we just kind of like kept in touch over like email and stuff, because he ended up moving to another city doing his stuff anyway. So, but yeah, we ended up getting married, and I just like took off and left where I was living and dove right into full Islam. Like it was
hijab and everything.
Yeah, so we ended up just meeting at somebody's house and doing the Islamic marriage, where you just have like the witnesses, and somebody brought hijab and abaya for me to put on, and there was a sister there to like teach me what I have to do. And I didn't even realize that like he was part of this organization, like kind of like a
Amir, like, right? Is he like
no, he wasn't. He was just more of like, he was a higher up because he had been a member for a long time. He was very active. But I didn't realize like that he was like, he had a lot of influence, so he had to appear like, anyway, he made it the impression that I needed to look the part. So like start wearing hijab right away. Like there was no delaying in that. And so yeah, just getting involved like this, and meeting these other women, and got pregnant right away, and just went all in, like we're just going to do this. So
yeah.
And I really just started practicing with these other Muslims and doing everything, only learning Arabic and Quran, and memorizing Quran and Tajweed, and all the things to, you know, learn about this religion, you know. And so it was about 7 years. 1 second.
So that just to jump in for a second, that sounds, you know, unfortunately kind of similar to what my wife went through as well, because she was a fresh convert. In her case, she converted before meeting me, and then we got married, and then I was like this religious, zealous convert, right? I mean, I was like gung-ho. I was like already, you know, causing problems in my family and getting my parents mad at me for being so religious, and, you know, telling everyone how they should live their lives. And then, of course, I'm getting married, so I expect my wife to wear hijab. I expect no music in the house. I mean, you know, you have this fresh convert, barely knows about Islam, and she's being told no music. I just imagine, like, it's like, I mean, you know exactly, you went through the exact same thing, right? So it can be tough. I mean, it can be incredibly tough. I would say in terms of, you know, your ex, he has a lot of leadership characteristics. He's very charismatic. He's very I mean, I don't want to praise him too much, but he's convincing. Like he's not an idiot, right? He's a smart guy. He knows what he's talking about, and we'll get into. I want to get into some of the conversations we had a little bit later. Once we get to your story, but it's not surprising that like, it's like, even like, you're probably not the only one that was convinced by him, because he's probably convinced a lot of other people to convert to Islam too. I wouldn't be surprised anyway.
And that's the thing. I got to know that he was quite influential, and you know, I would meet like fans of his everywhere we went. Like he was doing khutbahs everywhere, and so there's either people that really hated him or that really loved him because he was being controversial, you know. A lot of people were like, what are you doing? Go back to your country. Or they're just like, this is great. We need more of this. So it's basically calling Muslims to political Islam. And
where Where is he from?
He's Canadian, born and raised here.
Okay, so go back to your country means go back
Yeah,
to
it's
London,
like,
Ontario.
exactly. Don't live and don't live in this country and enjoy the freedoms if you're going, preaching against it, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's challenging though. Like this, just as a little bit of a diversion, it's a challenging topic because you have people like him that are using liberalism and democracy and freedom of religion and freedom of speech to fight to take away those very things.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like they use that as they're like, we have free speech and we're using the free speech, but now when we try to use free speech to like criticize Islam, now we're crossing the line. So it's just it's not fair, the double standard that we're facing.
It's crazy because if we get the world that he wants, like me and you both would be executed.
Yeah.
But he's using, they are using, and the funny thing is, I mean, Hizb ut-Tahrir is actually banned in many Muslim countries, right?
Yeah, lots. Well, because the goal of Hizb ut-Tahrir is to overthrow a Muslim government through military coup. It's like very clear. So they just want to find a Muslim majority army of a fairly large country out there. And, if you turn all the generals, like they could take over the government and start their own little khilafah, right? So, of course, those countries will ban Hizb ut-Tahrir because if that's what their goal is, they're like, nope, and they throw them in jail as soon as they do anything. So it's not like it's serious business for these countries,
Why do you think do you know that like do you understand the world theological difference or like what's the problem with ISIS? Do you know why they
ISIS
don't like
was they were considered as they weren't doing it the right way. They were killing too many Muslims, like they were going on and killing Shias as apostates. They were killing so they're like, that's not the right way to do it. I know the Hizb went to ISIS and tried to correct them, and they were also punished by ISIS. I heard that they had been executed by ISIS.
So the interesting thing is what ISIS does is they say everybody else is a munafiq, and that's why they kill them, because they don't want to kill Muslims either. Like they don't want to kill Muslims, so they say, "Oh, you're not Muslim." Therefore,
exactly, and that's what I mean. Like when you look at it, like any sort of political ideology in theory, and you sit there and try to draw out the outcome of it, it's never the same as when you implement that. So when you see ISIS on the ground, that's actual Muslims trying to put together an Islamic state. Like exactly. We're that is like we got proof of what that would look like on the ground. Like that, all the fallacies, or you can go and say, oh, that's not from that hadith. Everyone has their interpretations, and there's always going to be that problem.
Yeah.
And they were doing everything according to Islam. So you can't tell me that is nothing, that is not Islam at all. Like they were going as deeply as they could. Yeah. So it just proves that you can always have a lovely theory for a social system, but
it's I would say it's one possible interpretation of Islam. I wouldn't say it's the only one. I would definitely not say it's un-Islamic. I would definitely not say it has nothing to do with Islam. I mean, Muslims would argue it's un-Islamic based on the various interpretations. Some of the things they're doing is un-Islamic, but at the same time, no Muslim should be able to say with a straight face, this has nothing to do with Islam. It's called the Islamic State, for God's sake. I mean,
exactly. They're flying the flag. Like they were being as much as an Islamic State as you could possibly get. Like I know the Hizb, they say that, the sign of a real Khilafah is that they will go straight to Palestine and liberate them. Like that will be the first thing on the agenda. So the fact that ISIS was not doing that was proof that they're not like a real, they're just like a bunch of gang thugs, So
there's a checklist of things.
You're doing it wrong, guys. You're doing it wrong.
Didn't go to Palestine. Okay,
they didn't liberate Palestine. But
You know, there's a beautiful book I read called The Way of Strangers by Graham Wood. He's an award-winning journalist. He interviewed a lot of like Al Qaeda and ISIS and Taliban, and he kind of specializes in this. And you know, he talked about, he really gets in the mind, and I think me and you would understand these jihadis better than anyone else. These people, they literally think if they join ISIS that angels are going to come down and they're going to reestablish Muhammad's Medina in the 21st century. They think doesn't matter that the entire world is against them. I mean, they're not thinking logically, rationally in any sense. There's just angels are going to come.
Yeah.
And like people that were interviewed that went to ISIS, a lot of them were disillusioned because there was no angels. I mean, things were bad, right? Like really bad. And so when they came back, it was just, well, they were just idiots to go in the first place, but they were expecting to come back to like London, England, or Canada, Australia. They're not coming back. They've basically declared war on the country.
Yeah.
You know, they can't come back. It's just, but they were thinking like naively. And just to give another example of Muslims thinking this, there's a famous story, and Yasir Qadhi talked about this, of a man who was born who called himself the Mahdi. And he had the exact name that Muhammad said would be the name of the Mahdi. I forget what it was now. Muhammad ibn Abdullah or something. I forget. I don't remember. And this man was like a religious man in Saudi. He started telling people, I'm the Mahdi. If people don't know what Mahdi means the guide. He's like the imam that's going to come before Jesus comes. And he's going to reestablish, you know, put the Muslims back in. And, you know, even Shias are waiting for Mahdi as well, the 12th imam to come back. But the Sunnis are also waiting. And so this guy, he managed to convince a lot of learned, scholarly people in Saudi, including at the University of Medina, including Yasir Qadhi said he knows how, like smart people that were convinced that maybe this guy's really the Mahdi. And guess what happened? This guy, they snuck in, they made a little mini army, they snuck in weapons. I think what they did is they hid it inside caskets, pretended they were doing a janazah or something. I don't know the exact details. They brought a bunch of weapons into the haram, the most sacred area of the Kaaba, and they like killed a bunch of people and took it over. They took the Kaaba hostage, claiming to be the Mahdi. And of course, they got slaughtered by the Saudis. Okay, that's it. Like prophecy over, failed prophecy. I'm laughing because I shouldn't be laughing, but the point is, at that point, it became obvious to everyone. He's dead. It's kind of like when Jesus was supposed to be the Messiah and then he was executed, and now people are like, Messiah's dead? He's supposed to be the ruler, right? Like the same analogy. Yeah. He was supposed to be the king. Jesus was supposed to be the king of the Jew, of all of, and of course he got executed by the Romans. And so now a new theology was born out of that. But in this case, it just died. It was like, that was the end of it. No, he was a false Mahdi. He wasn't the Mahdi. But this is what religious like thinking can do to your brain.
I know.
It can infect your brain and you know, short circuit all of the rationality and thinking. And I hate to say it, but I have sympathy for people that fell for this. But obviously, there's no going back. You've crossed the line. Like at this point, you're involved in like a terrorist state or whatever. You cannot come back after that. Like there's no coming back. I'm not saying like I have sympathy on them from that perspective, but I understand like what they were thinking, right? Obviously, there's no going back from that. But Hizb ut-Tahrir is, you know, in my opinion, what they're trying to do is very dangerous, because what they're trying to do is make the world back into the 7th century.
Right.
They want to bring back this evil, theocratic, nasty system that would have dhimmis, like kuffar and disbelievers, as second-class citizens, right?
And slavery would be back, and everything. Like they would be declaring jihad on countries. They would be, I don't know, like that's their ideal world. And it's that whole self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, everybody's working towards it, and they all believe the promise that Islam will rule the entire world one day. So, I mean, it's just, it's not hard to convince good Muslims of it, you know, because they believe in that promise. So it is dangerous.
Can we talk a little bit more about your Muslim life? So like you said, you got married right away to this like high-ranking, let's call him high-ranking member of Hizb ut-Tahrir, this Islamist group. What was your life? What was your life like?
We moved around quite a bit. He was always doing activities for the group. There was always online stuff and events at different universities and doing khutbahs and all the halakas that they hold for members to learn. There's like a bunch of books you have to learn. So I was always learning these along the way as well. It was just part of my Islam. So it was just that, and that was always the top priority. Like, if the Hizb told us to move to a certain place in order to do something, like we would have to do what they did. CSIS, the Canadian Intelligence Agency, they followed us everywhere we moved. So every time we'd move, they'd knock on the door. They were like, "Why'd you move here? What are you guys doing?" So we knew we were always being watched. Canada does see them as an issue, but all they can do is kind of watch, right?
Yeah, because they technically are not breaking the laws.
Right.
Right? They're not actually telling people to do anything. They're trying to do something dangerous, but it's sort of theoretical, right? I mean, that's what they always say. Oh no, we're not saying anyone should kill apostates today. We're saying in an Islamic state. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, as your life as a Muslim woman, would you say your focus was like raising your kids Islamically, teaching them Islam, being involved in halakas and learning about Islam? What else was it? Is that what you mainly did for many years?
Yep, just having children, doing all the halakas with other women, getting to know all the different women in the mosque. We homeschooled with our kids, so just teaching Islam only. We planned on doing hijrah, moving to the Middle East. We were told that we should just, always be ready, to just move quickly. So, because, he knew that my family would try to stop us, obviously, from moving to the Middle East. And he wanted to, continue his work. So we would probably be trying to overthrow some governments out there, which is not safe for the kids.
Yeah.
So I was I was afraid for my kids as I'm raising them and they're getting older. And, so I was always afraid of taking them somewhere foreign where I'd be trapped, really. I wouldn't be able to just leave like I did here. It was already hard enough to leave here. But
as a Muslim, you were thinking this?
Kind of. I just knew that it was not safe. I didn't think I can't leave him. I just knew that I would be a lot more trapped. I would probably have to stay home all the time there. And my kids just wouldn't be safe. I just, they had health issues and stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, so for those of you who are joining now who missed the beginning, I'm speaking with Debbie. She's an ex-Muslim, ex-Mennonite, actually ex-Mennonite, ex-Muslim in that order, and now atheist. I have shared the link to her channel, so do check out her channel. She doesn't have any videos yet, but let's subscribe to her channel, and she's going to be creating some content which will be obviously on this topic as well. So definitely check out her channel. Do join it. And Debbie and I have an interesting shared history in that I was talking to her ex-husband before she left Islam, and now that she's left Islam, it just shows that more and more people are leaving Islam. Leaving Islam is becoming normalized, and that's a goal. We just any religion, any sort of view, people should be free to ascribe to it. And the funny thing is, Islam on one hand does say everyone's free. I mean, freedom of religion. They don't say freedom of religion. They say there's no compulsion in the religion, which you would think means anyone can leave it if they want to. And at the same time, if Islam was a compulsion, then it would be useless, because Islam means to submit. Yeah. So how can you have a religion that claims that it's submission, at the same time that claims no compulsion, at the same time kills people that leave it? It's a contradiction, right?
Yeah, I was taught that compulsion verse only meant becoming a Muslim initially. After you become the Muslim, that's out the window. Now you're submitting. Yeah. Totally you're a slave.
What do So when you said that you talked about slavery with Hizb ut-Tahrir, does Hizb ut-Tahrir defend slavery?
Yep, they say that it's part of Islam, and it will be a just slavery. It'll be like the way they talk it up. It's like it's not what we picture in our human history. This is like, the way Allah promised it should be, and But yes, there's slavery. There's going to be concubines, and if there's wars, then yes, they will take their women, and it's. I mean, it's a thing, whatever's in Islam, they just like, yep, that will be in there.
Just to rant a little bit more about Hizb ut-Tahrir, I'll tell you a funny story that happened. I was in university, I was Muslim, so I was, I guess, Salafi leaning. Actually, I wasn't even Salafi leaning yet. I was still like, just like Muslim. I'm just Muslim, just Sunni Muslim, generic Sunni Muslim. And I was still trying to figure out whether Sufi, Salafi, Hizb, whatever, like, Islamist, I shouldn't say Hizb ut-Tahrir, but like Islamist. I had Islamist friends trying to convince me about Islamic Brotherhood. And so one of my friends gave me a book of Sayyid Qutb, to read, which is very similar, let's say, to Hizb ut-Tahrir. The same.
We had those books. I read those ones.
I think it's In the Shade of the Quran, right? Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. So people don't know Sayyid Qutb is an Egyptian that wanted to bring back Islamic law.
He attempted overthrowing the Egyptian government.
Oh yeah. So they believe so there's definitely like a tension among Muslims between people like let's call them Islamists and I don't know what to call the other guys, non-Islamists. So the people that are like more Sufi leaning, they follow madhabs, they tend to like watch like Hamza Yusuf and stuff like that. Those guys clash with Hizbis. So at my university, there was one time where we had Munir al-Qasim. You might know him. He's from London as well. And he came to the university. I don't even remember what he was talking about. And Hizb ut-Tahrir guys came and they started shouting at him.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what they do.
That's what they did.
They show up at even Muslim speakers and they heckle them. And you're a fake Muslim. And I remember one of my friends was told by another Hizb member, you're not a proper Muslim. He was so mad. He was so pissed because they were having a debate about Palestine. And of course, my friend supported Palestine. I don't even know what he said that caused him to be labeled a kafir or munafiq or something. But like, this is the type of people we're dealing with. These people are like so antagonistic. And so there was a new, let's call him Hizbi convert. He was a non-practicing Muslim that became Hizb ut-Tahrir member or like ascribed to the teachings, right? And I was responsible for finding someone to do the khutbah, and I made the mistake of letting him do the khutbah, even though he was like fresh convert, whatever. Like not convert, but like he was a Muslim his whole life, but he wasn't practicing, and now he became religious. His khutbah was on why slavery is halal. And it caused such a big fight because the other Muslims started shouting at him after the khutbah, saying, how dare you say this? Slavery is haram. And the other guy is like, no, slavery is not haram. Allah never made slavery haram, right?
Exactly.
It's like this tension is there, right? And so you have speakers like Hamza Yusuf would come and they wouldn't necessarily call out Hizb ut-Tahrir, but they'd say like things like these, you have these Muslims that are putting the cart before the horse. They want to reestablish, Islamic politically, but they don't pray Fajr or something like that. So did you hear about any of this like Fajr thing?
No.
Like when Muslims will all pray Fajr. So they say, they'll say things like, it's more important that Muslims play Fajr first, and then we will win Palestine, something like that.
Oh,
right?
yeah. That's like a Salafi way. Like you have to focus on Tawheed, and then, everything will magically appear.
Yeah. And then the Hizbis and the Islamists will say, no, because Islam was strong because we had the caliphate, and therefore the non-Muslims had to respect the Muslims, because if they didn't, they'll send the armies and this and that, right?
Yeah.
So it's totally different priorities and perspective.
Yeah.
And so, like, definitely, I think that talking about political Islam is important because political Islam is the worst type of Islam. Would you agree with that? Like,
well, I mean, they're very clear about what their goals are. So, I mean, if that's like a problem, then we need to at least talk about it. And, you know, whether or not it's inciting violence right now, it appeals to those types of people. And when the end goal is, world domination, then we should, take a look at it. I mean,
How do they end up with such goals? Like, where is this coming from, Islam, or is this something they added on to Islam? Like, why do they want like world domination? Let's call that.
well, it's because it's in Quran, because that's what Allah said, that Islam will reach all ends of the earth. So they're just like fulfilling, their duties. So everything is Quran and Hadith based. That's why, like, after I left the marriage and I was looking back on everything, I'm like, I didn't just leave the marriage, I left the religion, because everything in there was Islamic. So I'm like, so everything I did leaving was like away from Islam. So I couldn't stay a Muslim even after leaving. Like, I couldn't even. So, and because, my ex is so vocal about his views, I feel compelled to also do this and explain what it's like. Because, I mean, when you see the world the way they do, I mean, it's scary. I mean, when 9/11 happened and I found out, like, that these guys are just willing to just die like that easily for their beliefs, like, that's scary, and the way Islam is set up, and especially the way the Hizb is set up, they're very they teach you how to think in a certain way. Like, they go through a process, and it's very cult like they teach you how to think, how to process anything, how to teach other people. I mean, everything that you learn from them, you can't even take notes. Like, you have to just, you retain it and regurgitate it right back all the time. And it's you start seeing the world in a different way, and it will make good well-meaning people do bad things, and that's a problem, and we need to be able to address that.
Yeah.
But I sympathize with people that left and joined ISIS and want to come back, because I feel like that could have been me. So if there was a good way to figure out how to de-radicalize somebody, I don't know what that looks like, but I was de-radicalized. Like, I mean, I left, right? And I got myself out of it. And it was like a messed up psychological problem. Like, changing my worldview back again was like I was going through what ex-cult survivors go through.
And you were
So
Muslim for 12 years, right? You said 12
yeah.
years? Yeah. That's a long time.
So I had no identity, like, when I left. Like, I went right back to that 27-year-old that converted to Islam. I didn't know who to be. It was really weird. And so it's when you think like the way Islam is set up, like, in an ideal situation, like, you are chanting in Arabic all day long. Like, you're saying the morning du'as, like, you're doing all the prayers and extra prayers, and everything's in Arabic. You're reciting different things for entering different rooms, and every time you look in the mirror, every time you drive. So you have no time to think for yourself. You're like almost like a drone. So I don't know what de-radicalization would look like for people trying to come back. If that's like, how do you even get, like, I don't know how to get somebody out of that mindset. It's just, we can't take away the things needed for when people do want to get out of it. And that's what's dangerous in Muslim countries, especially. Like, if there's so many ex-Muslims in Muslim countries, and they have to fake it because it's so dangerous. And that it shouldn't be a danger to not want to, go along with everybody.
Yep. Shouldn't. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you said, that it's, it is. I do think there are people who have joined, ISIS or whatever, that realize it's wrong, but I don't know how we would ever bring them back into society, because they've now, they've joined this terrorist group, so it becomes very difficult, right? But yeah, I do sympathize in the sense that, like, yeah, it could have been me too. I could have ended up joining some group like that, going overseas. This whole concept of hijra, it comes down to us versus them thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's what you get caught up in. It's really weird. Like there's the Muslims and the non-Muslims. So there's the like believers and non-believers, and it's repeated in the Quran so much. What happens to believers and non-believers? Excuse me. And so you start looking at everybody, especially when you're living in a Western country, like you are the outcast, and the more like looks you get, especially as a hijabi, you feeling more and more and more like an outcast. And then there's like these hate crimes, like which has happened here in London, which is when I was a hijabi, I was always scared like of things like that happening. Like I right away thought like this is like that can happen. So that only makes that division more apparent in your eyes when you're very fundamental about it. But I mean, we need to be able to address like what would drive somebody to want to do that to somebody is just so horrific to be able to just kill somebody like that. But
in a sense, I'd say they're like two sides of the same coin. People like that and people like, that go to religious fundamental, like not necessarily fundamentalists, but like extremists. They're both, they both have very hateful ideologies.
Yeah.
The Hizb ut-Tahrir ideology is not one that is actually telling people to kill people right now, which is why it can keep spreading, right? Because if it was a little bit more extreme, it would be just cut off, right? So they found a spot where they can keep using and keep spreading in Australia. And the type of Muslims that the grooming are the type that could potentially, flip and join like the caliphate, right? Because they've already been convinced. I mean, what convinced these people, these young ladies and young men in London, some of them highly educated, to join ISIS was the fact that there's hadith that they've heard about, that they've been taught about black flags, coming from Syria, and I don't know what else, but there's a bunch of signs or whatever, right? And obviously ISIS heard the signs too.
Exactly.
They read the same book, so they're like, black flag.
Look.
And did you ever hear, or were you ever taught that if someone calls for if there's a caliphate formed and you don't join, you will die the death of a child?
Yeah. That's why we were always on edge, like that we might have to move one day. But they were very much aware of everything that ISIS was doing to make sure, like, if the Hizb deemed them the right one, we would have had to drop everything.
Can you tell us about that? Like, what was that teaching about what I just said? Can you elaborate on that a bit? About the caliphate.
If there's a legitimate, like according to them, a legitimate Islamic state, a khalifa has been appointed, we have to move and support it. Like, it's very clear that if we die away from it, then we will die as a non-Muslim. So it was very like we're just like you be ready to just move within a week one day. So we were always like watching international news about what's happening geopolitically everywhere all the time, and the Hizb analyzes all of it. So we're always aware of like what's happening, especially when the Arab Spring happened. We're like, okay, is this happening? Like there might be a khilafah pop up, especially when Syria was like because of the hadith, it says it will arise out of El-Sham, which is Syria. And so we were just that was our ultimate goal. And he said we should be praying to die as shaheeds every day. Like should be our goal. It's so scary to say that, like, you should be praying every day to die a martyr. I mean, and then if you're scared of that, you have to feel guilty, because that's the goal of all the best Muslims, right? So now if I didn't want something that's the best thing for you, I was like feeling guilty and like a bad Muslim,
Yeah.
So yeah, whenever I showed like any sort of concern about bringing the kids overseas, like I would be called just negative and pessimistic, and I'm not trusting Allah. Yeah. So like spiritual abuse is a really a problem with Muslims, with this type of household. I believe you're just kept in line through the religion, you know.
Can you elaborate on that? Like spiritual abuse, by that, what you mean is using the religion to control the family, you mean?
Yeah, I think, you know, like you have to obey your husband, you have to serve him and do it uh, you know, without complaining, and always making him look better than he is, like to make him seem better, like that kind of thing. Like with my life, like constantly just, you know, speaking up about him and making him look so much better than he is. And especially to my family, I had to lie to them because after 7 years he got a second wife, and I
Oh
was
wow.
close to the second wife, and I spoke to my parents almost every day, and I had to lie about the whole thing. So she was just my friend. We had all this story, and none of it made sense half the time. But like, I had to lie all the time, and it was really wore me down to like. But it's the us versus them, like they're kafirs. So you know, we can lie to them and be deceitful as long as we're true to our Muslim family, which is a whole
Wow.
different thing going on. It's just. Yeah, the cognitive dissonance is also like you're just doing it with a smile because you have to, regardless if you're falling apart inside, you know. And if you do fall apart, like you're now being a bad Muslim, you know, because you're not thankful. So
I mean, I've heard of men who get second wives, but I haven't like heard the stories from a woman's perspective. So what was that like? So after 7 years, so you were married for 7 years, and then he
yeah,
decided to get a second wife.
yeah. He told me from the beginning though that he would want more than one wife, so I knew it was probably going to happen. And then when he met somebody on a matrimonial site that wants to be a second wife and all this stuff, and as it became a reality, I was just like, okay, well, I had 3 kids already, and I just stayed busy. I was devastated initially because we weren't having like a bad marriage where we didn't get along, and that's why he was doing it. He was doing it to just be more pious and do more sunnahs and
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
well, right. So yeah, this is how, you know, you make yourself
Yeah.
feel better. And then I'm buying all these books written by you know, polygamist women and how they go through it, and you know, just like this is my struggle that's going to get me to heaven, you know. And I would be reassuring other sisters that would come over and cry for me, and I would have to like reassure them and tell them it'll be okay. Like it's just,
Oh wow.
yeah, it was crazy. I lost a lot of friends and I gained like the more extreme friends. And when this happened, I got to know how many people actually do polygamy, because people don't talk about it, but once you are in it, then you're like, holy cow, like it's big. Like there's a lot of Muslims do this.
And
So,
I'm just gonna call out the elephant in the room. This is illegal. So how do they keep it legal?
apparently it's only illegal if you legally marry all of them, which is impossible. So it's like a loophole. So they're just like, I just got all these girlfriends.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So basically, the claiming, if ever asked, you know, legally, these are my girlfriends.
Yeah. There's a bunch of baby mamas.
But Islamically, they're actually wives because they've had
Yes,
an
they do the Islamic marriage, like, yeah.
with 2 witnesses, so it is actually a wife, but it's
Right.
just legally,
Just
they're
not
using
legally.
this sort of dishonesty to keep it
Yeah.
legal, right?
Right.
And all of the second wife, third wife, all of them have no legal protection, right?
Right.
In your case, did you do the legal, like you legally got married as well?
No, we didn't legally get married either.
So he didn't want to register the marriage?
No, we just left it.
I've heard of this, and why like, can you explain how did he convince you to do that?
I didn't really care because I had met him and it was like spontaneous. It was almost like a way out. I'm like, well, we're not going to legally do it. We'll just do it Islamically. So it'll be, you know, it was just it didn't matter to me. Like
Mhm.
it was just almost like a safety net for me.
So
Um,
there's a safety net for you, but normally it ends up being a safety net for the woman, the marriage, right? In terms of
um,
like asset distribution and
well, not
stuff like that.
necessarily, because if you're not legally married, you can keep things separate easier.
Oh, okay.
So like bank accounts and
Especially if you're
stuff.
coming in with more money, right?
Right.
Oh, interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
So did that affect at all that doesn't affect child support or anything like that?
No, it doesn't
Okay.
matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why did you lose friends? I didn't get that part.
The ones that thought it was ridiculous, like,
Yeah, but it's not your fault, so
Oh, but like I was,
you were
I was
supporting it
okay.
on.
Yeah, because I was okay with it and didn't stop my husband from doing it. I like how a lot of people would come over and like think I can control him. Like, why are you letting him
Bad
do that? I'm
woman.
like, what are you talking about? Like, I wish I could make him do things that I want. Like, how do you do that? Yeah.
It's people are, oh my god. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Why did you let him leave Islam? It's like people asking my wife, why did you let him leave Islam? Like, what, he just owned
Like,
me?
yeah, right. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like, that's a whole
Oh.
different.
So you're saying that there's a lot more people having second and third wives that you realize, like how common is this?
It's quite common. I
Yeah.
mean, the people just do it, and sometimes they live in the same house. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes just
So in your case, how was it?
lived in separate houses.
Okay. So how was he able to afford two houses, if I may ask? Like, how is that possible? I mean, that's not
Well,
common, right?
he owned businesses and stuff, and then child tax when you're having lots of kids. You get child tax every
So he's
month.
using
So,
the child tax from your kids
oh
to
yeah.
fund his second marriage.
Oh, that's the risk. He doesn't care where it comes from. Risk is risk. I had this argument with him. He was like, it doesn't matter. Your sustenance comes from with whatever. Like,
Gee,
so
that's
there's
disgusting.
like, yeah.
That's slimy. Oh man, that's supposed to be for the kids, not
Yeah.
for to be going on escapades with other women, right?
Yeah.
So you said you knew her.
Yeah. I befriended her to try to make it smoother transition,
okay.
and so the kids don't freak out. And so yeah, we became friends, and it was weird because we shared a husband, so if we had complaints we could like talk about it together. So there's like weird things that you can help each other and stuff, but it was crazy, like, to try to live that life amongst and lie to people about it. And then like you'd get these men that want their wives to be okay with it too, so they would come over with their wives and try to make us like these we would know. I knew what was happening, like some strange couples coming over, and then the wife sits down in front of me and the sister wife, and she's like sitting there like terrified, like, because she's now being told how to become a polygamist basically. And it's like, I was so mad. Like, these women don't want to do this. Like, this is like one of the hardest things you could do. And so I would just tell them, like, look at the bright side. Like, you'll only see this guy half the time. Like, that's all I could say. Like, do your own thing. You can demand some stuff. It's like, if I'm okay with this, then I want this. Like, just take advantage somehow. I don't know. But yeah, there was like a lot of this.
So just not to confuse viewers, because some people are kind of saying surprised, this is still like minority within minority though. So like within like very religious Muslims, I don't know if non-religious Muslims would do it, but like within
it's always the religious ones.
Yeah, so within this group of religious Muslims, you have a minority that are doing it. Like, in me personally, I knew one guy who told me he wanted to get a second wife, and I knew the imam did it, but even in my circle, I didn't actually know anyone who did it, or at least they didn't tell me. And I was like, I was in the circle, like I was one of them, so I wasn't like, they would have no reason to hide it from me, I would say. But I think you're right that when you actually do it, then the people that are also doing it kind of will it becomes a little mini like subculture inside the culture that these we're all together in this, right?
Yeah.
Emotionally though, like I would say, if you look at history, there were a lot of polygamous marriages, but it doesn't make it any easier. And like
No.
from an evolutionary perspective, from a woman's perspective or a man's perspective, let's look both ways. From a man's perspective, you wouldn't want your woman to be with another man, because if she gets pregnant, then you're raising someone else's offspring. And not that that's a problem per se, but if that happened, evolutionarily, my genes would have been cut off. So that means if I didn't mind my raising other people's kids, I wouldn't have kids that would succeed evolutionarily, right?
Yeah.
Meaning the cuckold problem is, men have evolved to want exclusive access to the woman because they don't want to raise someone else's kids. Because if they did, then they wouldn't exist, because my parents would have, their line would have ended. So that tendency gets passed on. From a woman's perspective, she wants her man to invest all of his resources, I'm saying historically, into the marriage, into the offspring, because if he goes and has other children with other women, then there's just that much less resources for the family, for your family, right? So it makes sense that a woman would not want her man to have another woman. It just makes perfect sense, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, from an evolutionary perspective, but emotionally, we're all hardwired to, like, it's a very difficult thing to accept, right?
Yeah, it is. It was so hard. Like, I bought this really good book from an Islamic bookstore, and it was like going through like how all the hadith that the wives of the prophets pertaining to polygamy and like different things that they went through and their jealousies, and it just helped me get through. And I had to literally show him, like, look, like, this is hard for me emotionally, like, you can't discount that. And because he's just like, it's allowed in Islam, so you should just be fine with it. It's like, I still have emotions. I would have to like go through all the emotions that I'm going through with the book to prove to him that it's like a real thing. Like, he was just like, so like everything, like, if it's okay with Islam, then it's okay with Islam.
Yeah, it's easy for him to say that, being the one that's having the second wife. But I mean, like, men should, like, I don't have a problem with polygamy, but if a man should be allowed to do it, then a woman should be allowed to do it too. It's only fair. Like, polyamory is a more equitable system. Now, I don't think polyamory is for probably 99% of people, but like the Islamic system's completely one-sided. The man can have multiple wives, woman cannot have multiple partners. But like, a man in that situation should think about it and say, well, if I want her to be okay with that, would I be okay with that? Right? And you can't say, oh, just because it happened, it's more common, or just because in history it happened. That doesn't make it any easier to accept. And so the same emotions that she is feeling, you should be able to empathize with that if she did the same thing, right? Like, at least have that empathy, right?
Yep.
And so these women were coming to your house, trying, the husbands wanted to convince them that, oh, look, this is so good. Like, practically speaking, how was life with a second wife? She was in a different house, so you would see her husband half the time then?
So she lived on the same street. We spent time together. We would cook together. We were pregnant at the same time. I mean, wow, it sounds insane,
weird.
right? But like, I just dove in, or like, this is how it is Islamically, and it was. There's like a TV show called Sister Wives that came out. We watched all of that to try to get inspiration on how to do this, like, as a polygamous family. So, I mean, culturally, there's support for this kind of stuff, whether or not it's illegal,
Yeah.
So I did my very best to make the best out of every situation I was put into. Again, like, I believed in Islam, so I was, this was my jihad in my life that I was going to, go to heaven for,
This was what you were saying about spiritual abuse. It enables situations, less than ideal situations, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And what about your kids? How did they take it? Did they eventually accept this as well? How did they?
Yeah, they accepted it because I was very good about not, I was just like, this is our family. This is like, we have like a larger family. So they didn't know any different. Where it got difficult was teaching our children to lie to my parents.
Oh.
And then we would have to explain, like, look, they won't understand because they're too far. Like, it's just like teaching little kids this difference, right? It was very hard on them to have to keep secrets because they would go spend nights, at their grandparents' house and stuff. So it's not like they didn't have much relationship. They had a close relationship with my
That's good.
family.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm so thankful for. My parents did not disown me amongst all this. And I stress that to anybody who's worried about a family member joining Islam is don't cut them out. Try to keep them close so that if they need to get out, you're welcoming to that. That's my advice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
My parents didn't agree with it, but they stayed by my side and helped me. So.
And eventually you left it.
Yeah, and they were there for me, even though I had been lying to them about polygamy.
Yeah.
Boy, were they upset when I told them about the polygamy part. But yeah.
Going back to the whole us versus them thing, when you said that, you felt like worried about, being attacked and stuff like that. My experiences were a little bit different in that, other than when my wife wore niqab for a very short time, when she wore niqab, she started getting a lot more like abuse. Like there's a bunch of things that happened. Someone threw can at her or something, shouted at her, go back to your country, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But other than that, for the most part, I think as a Muslim in Canada, we had Muslims in Canada. We had a really good life. Like I looked the same as I did. I probably had a bigger beard even. I am speaking from a position of privilege in terms not of money, but in terms of education. So I'm lucky in that I had, I did my education here and I did computer science. So in terms of education, I didn't have a hard time getting a job. So it wasn't like they could have discriminated. They could have still discriminated against me, but it's totally different if you're like a factory worker versus you're working for Amazon. You're working as a techie guy, right? Because it's a different dynamic there. But I was treated, and the other thing with techies is they tend to be more atheist and they tend to be more liberal, right? And so in my crowd, people like, they treated me with respect. They were like, yeah, he's kind of crazy. Like he's doing all these things that he doesn't need to do. Like my boss's jaw dropped to the ground when I told him like I can't get a mortgage. He was like, what? Like, how does that even make sense? Like, what does that have to do with religion? Like, he didn't even get it, right? And then I told him, like, I'm willing. When I said I would do this, I would rather rent my whole life rather than like upset God or something like that. He was like blown away. Like he couldn't believe it, right? Like he was just like, I can't believe you're saying this. Like this doesn't make any sense. And these guys had a good influence on me. Ultimately, the respect, the kindness, and they questioned me sometimes. We had conversations. I was very open about religion. I'm like, yeah, ask me anything. Let's talk about it. And eventually, little tiny doubts, little tiny things managed to like click in my head, which ultimately open the stage for more and more doubts and more open questioning, and being able to see that this is a facade, right? Like the canopy of Islam, which was thick, is like a jungle. A little bit of light was getting in, just a little bit of light, right? Little small doubts. One of the first things that actually got in for me was one of my friends. It looks like we lost Debbie. While I'm waiting for her to reconnect, I will just keep going on about my story. 1 second. So yeah, I'm just waiting. I just messaged her to come back. What happened with me was one of my friends, an atheist friend, actually sent me a study. And the study said that people that prayed I sent him the study saying that, look at this study, this amazing study. when you pray for people, they get healed faster. So in my mind, as a Muslim, that made perfect sense. When you pray for someone, they of course they'll get better, because that's what prayer does, right? And I'm like, when I sent it to him, he looked into it. Turns out it was like a practical joke or something. It was the study was made as like a kind of joke or something. It wasn't even a real study. And it turns out the actual opposite is true. Like the Harvard prayer study shows that people that pray, it makes no difference to the healing rate. And in fact, some people actually, it took them longer to get better, maybe because they felt anxious or something, that someone's praying for me, I need to get better. Someone is asking, I'm just going to go to the questions. Can you please make a video about meditation? I can't meditate properly. I failed. I would recommend that you get the Waking Up app by Sam Harris, or even look up any guided meditation on YouTube. Some of the guided meditation videos on YouTube I find kind of dumb. They're like, oh, you're back. I'm just answering.
Sorry, I think my internet failed.
Oh, no worries. I'm just answering a question on meditation.
Okay.
I was going to say some of the meditation apps, videos are dumb. They have music, ooh, and they're like, they don't even know what they're doing. I really like Sam Harris and the way he does it. Very straightforward, focus on breathing. If a thought comes to your mind, that's fine. That's okay. Don't worry about it. And just be aware that a thought came to your mind. Just get back to your meditation. So back to Debbie. I was just saying that, like, befriending people is the best thing to do, being respectful. I actually felt as a Muslim that life in Canada was good. I appreciated secularism because I felt like I'm allowed to practice my religion. I'm allowed to pray at the office. Of course, when I was in high school, I didn't have the same respect. I remember working at Walmart, and they tried to fire me when I asked them for time to pray. They're like, "What do you mean you need time to pray?" Like, I should have just gone ahead and prayed on my own, instead of asking for it like formally or whatever. But the point is, they didn't like it, right? It was like,
Interesting.
But yeah, I never felt discriminated. I felt like as a Muslim, I'm a valuable member of society, that society cares about my contribution, and that Canada is better with Muslims. And I didn't have this us versus them as much as, but here's what Tahrir, they tell people don't vote, right? Like, don't get involved in politics.
Yeah, no involvement with government or politics, so you don't join the police force or any army or government agency, because now you're working for kufr laws, so, and voting is very sinful. So,
and also not only that, you can't donate blood, right? Like, I remember the weirdest thing. So there's a Muslim group that does a blood donor drive every year. Mm-hmm. The weirdest thing, Muslims were telling me, don't donate blood because it goes to the army, which goes to kill Muslims. I was like,
yeah, or you're helping non-Muslims, you're helping kafirs by donating blood. And same with donating organs, it's not allowed, because after you die, your body is not yours. So yeah,
I had a really tough time with that one. I want to talk about cognitive dissonance. That was like major cognitive dissonance for me. I was like, that makes no sense.
Because it saves lives. Yeah.
And I'm dead, and it saves lives. Yeah. How can you tell me not to donate? I could not imagine when my Muslim family member, my cousin, told me you can't donate your organs. I was like dumbfounded. I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, you're wrong. I'm going to look it up. And I looked it up, and it was basically what you said. There's people that say you cannot donate your organs. That to me did not click. And I think in that case, I actually ignored it, and I still signed the donor card. I even told my family members, donate my organs. There's no way God, in my mind, this is when I took my own rationality over the religion. And I'm like, there's no way Allah would punish me for helping someone with my organs after I die.
Right? I know.
That doesn't make any sense. That's like ultimate stupidity. That's like level of Mormon, cannot take blood transfusions.
Yeah.
That's like that level of stupidity. Okay, someone's gonna die if you don't give them blood, and you're telling me your religion says not to give. Get out of here. Get out of here with your religion.
Yep. You have to obey it. Doesn't matter.
Is there any other examples of cognitive dissonance that like you face? I know sometimes it's hard to think on the spot of things that happened that like caused you, but like what were some of the things you like challenged him with? Like that, you know, my wife used to ask me things too, and I'd be like, yeah, Islam says this, and you kind of gloss over the stupidity of it. But like, was there things like that you can think of?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're helping the wrong people. I mean, I remember trying to go to a woman who she would teach like halakas for women, and the marriage like for me was difficult at that time, and I wanted to go to talk to somebody about it, and like so as soon as I started saying something to her, she like stopped me and she like made me recite Quran, and she was like, "That's the solution." Like Shaitan wants to come between every married couple, and you must seek refuge from Shaitan, and this is what you have to do. And it's just like, okay, so everything just like went right back to reciting and doing that kind of thing. So there was a lot of that, like real life problems having to be answered by magic. That was just, it's really difficult.
Was this lady qualified in any way for counseling or anything? Like,
No,
just a
she was
friend?
just like this religious mentor kind of
Okay.
thing.
I
Yeah.
have had the exact same issue. I was having some issues. I went to talk to a friend and I realized how completely and utterly useless it was to talk to this religious individual because the only thing he could come up with was the prophet did this
Yeah.
and the companions did this, and it was so useless. It's like I already know all that. I already tried all that. None of that works. It's more complicated. Real life is
Yeah.
more complicated than your damn 1400-year-old books and these like, you know, rudimentary examples that were like preserved over 1400 years. It's more complicated than
Yeah.
that. Life is more difficult than just the prophet did this and she said do this, and like it's like talking to a child, trying to get a child to help you with your problems because they're not able to think real world. They're not able to understand complex relationship dynamics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, and what ultimately caused, you know, the marriage problems, would you say? Was it the religious things or was it just personal?
It was, I guess for me, I had things were just getting really bad for me personally because I wasn't getting any sleep anymore. I had 4 kids, one with severe autism who didn't sleep at night. So then dealing with him, and then dealing with the second wife and her kids too. So we were just always back and forth, running around doing stuff. He was just busy with his stuff all the time. He would just come and go as he pleases. It was just, I was getting really depressed, and I told him that, like, I feel like there's something wrong, and he wouldn't really say much about it. So he took her on a trip for 5 weeks to look for a country to move to. So they went to a whole bunch of Muslim countries together, and I was left with all the kids, babysitting them all for 5
Both
weeks. Yeah.
both her kids and your
Yeah.
kids.
And that ultimately did it for me. Like I would go to like friends, like Sisters for Help, and they'd be like, "You're so stupid for letting him do this." I'm like, I tried to stop them from doing this, like that I'm not in any shape to do this. And they didn't care. They were just like, they just did it. So I just got in shit for allowing it. And so I like walked into an emerge at the hospital, like saying like, I'm at my wit's end, I don't know what to do. Like it was just like me grasping for help. I didn't, it wasn't me just like trying to leave the religion. It was me trying to get help, and I was not getting it. And I just decided to end the marriage, or tell him that I want, like, leave me alone for like several months so I can figure things out because this is not working. And then it took about 3 months of him trying to figure out why I'm trying to leave him and not leaving me alone. And I just ended up taking off to my parents with the kids and saying I'm not coming back. And then we ended up staying in a shelter because now he was wanting to take all the kids from me because now I'm being bad, right? And yeah, so it was just like a whirlwind trying to get out of it, the marriage, like get away from, just trying to get away from it. Like it wasn't even, and then just like working through it and the trauma of it and figuring out like this religion basically killed me. Like,
Oh man. So you would say, I mean, clearly that Islam didn't make your life better, didn't improve your life as a Muslim woman. You got the shit end of a stick, basically, right?
yeah.
And like I would even argue, I thought about this recently, that even if Islam did, like, let's say you can argue that Islam improved women's rights. Let's just say, wouldn't you agree that Christianity improved it even more by limiting the marriage to one man, one woman? I mean, the whole no divorce thing is problematic for sure. I mean, that's stupid. But I think that Christianity is actually, if you're comparing the two, at least in terms of this rule, a woman is better having one man as a not sharing him with other women. That works better. The reason why Islam allowed it is because it grows the religion faster.
Yeah.
Basically, it creates more little child soldiers that Muhammad
Yeah.
could eventually use to grow his empire, and it's all a numbers game at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I saw it. Like these guys with their multiple wives, and they're growing. Like there's so many kids. I always say like they're starting their own tribe, like because they're having like 9-10 kids with all these women, like just easily.
Mhm. Yeah. So that's, I mean, this is what I'm trying to shout from the tops of this buildings, that Islam is not good. It's not good for women. It's not good for anybody. And it obviously, hearing it from your perspective just makes it all the more real to hear from a Muslim, ex-Muslim woman, a woman that actually went through this. And the irony is that this guy telling me that my life is going to be miserable if I leave Islam, and his own wife left Islam. It's just like, such cognitive dissonance to think that Islam is the cause of someone's happiness or not. Like, it's, even as a Muslim, I knew that there's more to it than just that.
Yeah, definitely. You're just stuck, like especially as a woman, like you have to obey your husband whether you like it or not. That's your first duty. As long as it's not telling you to leave Islam or do something un-Islamic. But if it's within Islam, you have to. So again, like I think a lot of these ISIS wives were obeying their husbands and doing their duty. I don't know. That's such a complicated situation, but I just see myself in them so much that I really have this like soft spot for them, that maybe they're really trying to get away from it. But again, like it took me so long, and I was just so thankful that I'm in a country where I'm free to leave an ideology if I want to. So
I do think access to information is important, because a lot of these countries, they try to block off access to Islam, and I don't want to say anti-Islamic website, but anything that basically questions Islam. I know my little blog, who am I? You know what I mean? Like, they block my blog, and it's like, I'm a nobody. Like, I'm just some guy in Canada that's just talking about my experiences. I'm just a guy talking about my experiences. I'm not a researcher. I'm not some big shot that goes on TV or anything. I'm just some guy that's just talking about why I didn't think Islam makes sense. And they actually, like, the fact that they blocked my blog in like Abu Dhabi, or so I think Emirates blocked me, Pakistan blocked me. It's just like, how fragile is your worldview that you have to block little blogs from Canada? You know what I mean? It's just like, it's a joke. It's such a joke. And when I was engaging with this guy, they come across very confidently that we'll debate anyone, we'll talk to anyone, we'll you know. And but the points they come up with, they're so weak. Like, for example, one of the points this fellow brought up to me was, okay, well, first of all, he said, oh, you're another, what did he say? You're another, I forgot. Anyways, the points they come up with are so, oh, he said, you're another Majid Nawaz. That's what he said. Oh, you're just like Majid Nawaz. I know you people like you. Anyways, so the points they come up with, like even Hamza Yusuf's not Islamist, but like Hamza Yusuf and like even, your ex, the points they're so weak. They're like, well, if evolution is true, then how did the human eye evolve? Even Darwin didn't know about that. Well, in the 150 years since Darwin said that, we figured it out.
I know.
We're not in the 1900s or
whatever.
Yeah,
and we're not revering Darwin as the be all and end all of science. Like, we progress like constantly.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like science didn't end when he discovered
exactly. It's just they don't get it.
Yeah. And then so that was like a very easy point, and I told him, like, and he was sending me this like 1 hour videos of him giving khutbahs, and somehow that was supposed to convince me. I'm like, I'm gonna listen to you talk for 1 hour, just like make it quick, get to the point. But I did, and there wasn't anything of substance there. It's like, I think, oh yeah, so here's what he would do. So when I would say something, for example, well, Allah comes down to the lowest heaven every night. Like, does that make sense to you? I said, Allah's coming down to the lowest heaven. Like, Allah moves. He's like, no. They take the Ash'ari view that Allah, like, you don't take it literally. So it's unfalsifiable. So basically, Allah coming down, it's just Allah's getting close to you in his metaphysical way, that he's closer to answering your prayers. But the problem still exists, that if Muhammad didn't know about time zones, which he didn't, because obviously fasting is like 20 hours in Norway, and it's like 12 hours or like 8 hours in Mexico or something.
Yeah.
He didn't know about time zones. We know he didn't know about time zones. So you're basically fixing the problem by reinterpreting a different way. But it's still possible that this is just a mistake, that he didn't realize there's different time zones, because on a flat Earth there's no time zones.
Yeah.
The sun comes down and the sun goes up, and it's nighttime for everybody at the same time. So Allah coming down could actually make sense, because there's no inconsistency of him being down and up at different times. The problem is, in a round globe, he has to stay down because it's always nighttime. Nighttime moves, right? So that's like a logical problem in Islam. But if you take the Ash'ari point of view, then you don't have to worry about that, right? It's unfalsifiable. And so then I would point out things like this, and I would say, well, the Quran seems to have scientific problems. And he's like, yeah, but Islam is not meant to teach science. I'm like, okay, fair. But then it's propagating those problems. He's like, yeah, but Islam wasn't meant to correct people's scientific inaccuracies. So Islam, the Quran, not only wasn't meant to teach science, but it also further propagated those issues by using the same flawed language of like holding up the sky with pillars that you can't see, of the sky being solid, that doesn't have any flaws in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Of like all of these things seem to be wrong. Yeah, but it just only seems to be wrong. But Allah didn't want to. It's like okay, so Allah is talking like a flawed 7th century individual. Yes.
Yeah.
But he knows better. Yes. And this is convincing to you. Yes. Okay. I'm not convinced.
You just take it.
Yeah, like mountains as pegs, as beaches, saying like it. None of this, it's so artificially. It's so weak. Like the argument's so weak, but they still use it because some people just don't look into the details. Some people don't dig into the details. So they're like, yeah, mountains as pegs. It sounds good, but like when you look into it, like you said, the scientific miracles, it all falls apart. All of it. And I think some people, they want to have the cake and eat it too. They want to use the scientific claims, but also say that's not the only meaning. Yeah. So like it's kind of like, well, make up your mind. Okay, if there's no scientific claims, then I'm with you on that. There's no scientific claims, but then why do you believe it? Like what convinces you, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's like that stupid challenge in the Quran saying that write something like it, and they'll just like deny anybody that actually tries and does it. They're just like, nope, that's not right. Nope, that's not like. So like they can just say no to everything.
And that's exactly it. When I actually was debating him, and I brought up examples like for example the Surah Fa Qaf,
Hmm.
they're like, no, that doesn't count. Okay, well,
Yeah,
why
they just
not?
say no.
Like it's written by someone that knows Arabic, that studied Arabic
Yeah,
to a high level, to university level. I know the individual, and it's perfect. That there's no grammar mistake. It makes fun of the Quran because it
yeah,
talks about whiskey and dancing girls and it's like they don't get it. They like Farid made a response to it saying, yeah, but like, dancing girls with whales, that doesn't make sense. Why would they wear whales or something? Or like, he was hanged and then choked. If he's hanged, he's already dead. Why does it need to be choked too? Well, the Quran does the same thing. The Quran talks about smashing and chomping and
yeah,
crushing and like, do you not see the same thing? You're criticizing Surah Faqaf. The Quran has the same problems then,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I just want to highlight
exactly.
the super chat because I was generous enough to donate. Hizbut Tahrir logic on sorting injustice Muslims face in China, Burma. God knows how many decades of Muslim world without. So this is something that Hizbut Tahrir brings up a lot. They bring up the fact that, oh, Saudis are fake Muslims because they're
Yeah,
not helping the Muslims, eh?
yeah, yeah. Like they're not actually Muslim countries. They're just like, puppet regimes put there by the West. If it's an Islamic regime like Iran, they do that on purpose to make Islam look bad. I mean, there's always, like, if they say go move to an Islamic country, they're like, there is none. There's
Yeah.
no right
There's
one.
no Islamic
Like
country.
they're all just like fake. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, even Saudis fake Muslims, and
yeah.
I don't know. Do they ever? I don't know if I don't think they boycott Hajj, but like the pretty much consider them disbelievers, the Saudis, eh?
Yeah, because it's a kingdom. Like you're
Yeah,
not supposed to obey a king. The whole thing.
but
And the
like,
way, like, all the scholars are appointed by the government, and the scholars tell everybody to obey the government. So they just like, it's just appeasing the Muslims. That's it.
someone is saying she was in a cult, not Islam. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I agree.
Not
I
Islam?
Well, my form of Islam was very culty. that's what I'll say. Like most Muslims that I meet were just like the way I was a Christian, just growing up in a Christian family. It's not like I was adhering to. I did for a bit, but it's very culty the way the Hizb conducts their daily life and how everything is structured around the work of the Hizb. So like you're always in activism mode.
I would say that. I mean, I thought about this too because I don't like saying Islam is a cult, but the way I reconcile this is that you are more or less in a cult based on how your Islam is, how you practice your Islam. So you were in a cult for sure. I
Yeah.
was probably in a cult too, to some extent, a little bit less than you, but a little bit more than most Muslims because all my friends were Muslim. All my life was Muslim. Everything was
Yeah.
Muslim in my life. Other than the fact that I worked for with non-Muslims and stuff like that. That was like my outlet that was not Islamic, but everything in my life was Islamic. So when I left Islam, I kind of lost everything. I lost all my friends, even friends which I knew for 10 plus years. They're all religious. We were all friends for Islam. So they didn't like one guy told me who knew me since I was since I converted. He said, I'm not helping you move houses because I moved houses. I finally got a mortgage because now mortgage is not haram. So yay, I can get a mortgage. The only thing stopping me wasn't financial. It was I just couldn't do it because of dogma. So when the dogma is gone, I'm gonna live my life now, right? So I got a house for my family, and he's like, yeah, I can't help you move. I'm like, why? Well, even I was getting movers anyways, but he just decided to tell me this. I'm like, why?
Wow.
He's like, oh, because you have a blog against Islam. I'm like, oh my god, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so he stopped being my friend. Most of the people in my life, my wife lost like tons of friends because I brought her into this thing, and I, all these Salafi sisters, and not all of them are Salafi, but like a lot of all religious, whether they were Salafi or not. There were like also non-Salafis too. Like one good friend of ours was Sufi, and his wife was obviously the family Sufi, right? And they were just as practicing as a Salafi. So some people they misrepresent Salafis as extremists. They're not extremists because in that sense, they just have they're just a different type of theology. Like they have different beliefs about Allah. They believe Allah has two hands, even though they're not hands like we have hands.
Yeah.
But they still don't listen to music. Even the Sufis didn't listen to music. My Sufi friend wouldn't eat al-zabiha halal because it was factory slaughtered. He wanted hand slaughtered.
Yeah.
So like that's extremist, if you ask me. Like that's more extremist.
Oh, we had to only have hand slaughtered stuff as well. Yeah.
Are you serious?
We actually ran a slaughterhouse, a halal slaughterhouse for a few years.
That's the reason why you only eat hand slaughtered, because there's financial benefits to the family.
We actually did it too. Yeah, hand slaughtering, crazy.
I think that was another cognitive dissonance point for me, that when I learned that in Saudi Arabia, the chickens are slaughtered by machine, and they have a machine saying Bismillah Allahu Akbar, Bismillah, like a tape recorder.
Yeah.
Like the tape recorder plays Bismillah Allahu Akbar and the machine slaughters it. And Yasir Qadhi was trying to tell us in the class I took with him, there's no other way to do it. There's too many people. There's just not like enough manpower to slaughter it by hand. I mean, to be honest, if they did it by hand, I think the price would be more representative of the animal suffering, and I think that'd be better actually, because then less people can eat meat. Meat would be more expensive.
Yeah, it just doesn't have to be like so abundant. It doesn't have to be that abundant. It's not like our only form of food.
Exactly. So as someone that's like, I would say ethically leaning towards veganism, I would say that's better. But they don't care about animals. None of this has anything to do with animal welfare.
It's just about Allah's like ways and laws. That's it.
Yeah, they make it, and that is something that Hizb ut-Tahrir is a little bit more mature about, in the fact that they don't beat around the bush. They don't say that they'll probably try to do one of those have your cake and eat it two things, where they'll say, well, Islam is actually good for you and it's obeying Allah, but they'll also say, yeah, well, it's not about good for you or not. You do it because Allah said so. It's not about coming up with, like, maybe we don't know the reason why. Maybe it looks bad, but maybe it's actually good and we just don't know it, right? Like that's kind of like the twisted circular logic they'll come up with. Yeah, good for you, but we just don't know why.
Yep, exactly. We don't know the wisdom of it always.
So that cognitive dissonance for sure. When I found out that the machine slaughtering thing, I'm like, well, machines are, but Muhammad al-Sharif said, yeah, what did he say? Machines are Muslim. The machine is Muslim. That's what he said. Of course. Allah controls the machines or something. I don't know. Like it obviously, like when you start looking into the details, that's when things start falling apart. When things stop making sense, when you realize that, like, okay, if you go to Saudi, any Muslim country, there's a machine slaughtering. Well, what's wrong with machine slaughter then? Why can't I eat the meat here? Like, what's the problem, right? And it's just like, it starts falling apart when you look into the details.
Exactly.
Do you agree with veganism or vegetarianism, or what do you think about that?
I don't like the way the factory farms are run, especially since we did own a slaughterhouse. I did, like when I was a teenager, we had a beef farm. So I have seen some really lovely beef farms. They're not like these factory farms that you see. But I prefer, like, go to a farmer and get meat if you want something like ethically slaughtered, because most farmers that raise animals, like, they treat their animals well. Like, it's not like a factory, like.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about the ethics, then I don't think you have to quit meat. I don't think that's a necessity, but I think we don't need it in the abundance that we have it right now. I think that's completely unnecessary.
It's completely unsustainable too, because
there's no need for us to have a freezer full of food unless maybe we slaughtered something we hunted and it's supposed to last us a year. That's the only time we should have stockpiles.
In my case, with 7 people in the family, we definitely have a freezer full of food. Otherwise, I'll be shopping every day. But in terms of in terms of eating meat every day, I would agree with you that, like, I still eat meat, but yeah, it's definitely good to have less. And I do think that if we went back to, like, what you said, like buying from a farm, obviously it'd be more expensive, but then probably we'd eat less, right? And so that would be better. The price of cheap meat is basically animal suffering. And on top of it, like, if the whole world wanted to eat as much meat as we do, it wouldn't work. Like, people, like the countries that are growing now rapidly, like China, Brazil, India, if they were eating as much meat as we did, like it would be completely unsustainable because there's just not enough grain, there's not enough water, there's like we are living like way past like our needs, and it's completely unsustainable. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Eating less meat is better, buying from a farm. Not totally related to Islam, but just thought that was an interesting point. So I'm going to share your channel again. For those of you who are joining us now, do check out Debbie's channel. The link is in the chat, and subscribe to it. The link is in the description as well. Debbie, what's your first video going to be on?
Yeah, I haven't like decided exactly how I'm going to go about it, but I found the website that I read through and became Muslim through. So I feel like I'm going to go through each point, like all the miracles and stuff, and like talk about each thing and be like, you know, this is what got me to say Shahada. So let's debunk some of this stuff. So I'm gonna.
Which website was that?
It's hang on. It's called.
Is it a brief illustrated guide to understand?
That's the one. That's the one. How did you know?
How did I know? Because I used to give out those books, and I also was convinced by them.
Yeah, see, that's the one. So it's 100%.
I had a feeling because yeah, that book is quite popular, and it is compelling. The points they make. And it convinced me. So what really helped me was actually reading there's a blog called Rational Islam where the guy actually debunks a bunch of points, and then one of my good friends, Pete the Rationalizer, actually went and talked and interviewed a lot of those scientists.
Nice.
Right?
I know. I've seen a lot of the debunking of the scientific claims, so it's pretty, because I'm like, even when I was Muslim, I was like, if these things were you know, if these scientific proofs were actual like scientific miracles, you would have like scientists flocking to Islam. They'd be like, you know, I have to be a Muslim. Like they would all be, but it's like maybe
no, they're too arrogant, sister. You see this?
Yeah,
they get money to stay non-Muslim, and they get money to fight Islam because Allah, Shaitan is strong.
Exactly.
That's true. That's a good point. Actually, we do find like, you know, people that study like especially physics and stuff, they tend to be atheist or agnostic because, you know, at that level, you know, things just don't like even Einstein. People like to quote Einstein believed in God, but like he actually attacked the Bible. He said, I can't believe that the character of the Bible is a creator. It just doesn't make any sense to him, right? And maybe he was deist, you know, probably he was deist, but you know, a lot of these, I think a lot of these scientists at that time would have become probably agnostic or atheist if they live today, because the information that we have, the knowledge we have about the universe, it's so much more than like even Darwin. Before Darwin, like it was much more difficult to not believe in God because nobody had a naturalistic explanation for how we got here. After evolution,
scientists would be allowed to even say they were atheists, so they probably just faked it even back then, because like they lived in a government system where they would like off with your head if you didn't believe in Christianity or whatever.
And you know, someone mentioned in the chat, it's way far back now, about Keith Moore. Keith Moore is in this brief illustrated guide too. And my friend Pete, he emailed Keith Moore to try to get him to basically, you know, go back on his claim that the Quran is amazing, right? Or whatever he said, right?
Yeah.
Even though he didn't exactly say that, he carefully worded it that, and frankly speaking, like if anyone looks at the blog post I have on embryology, you can see that it wasn't very convincing what he said. It wasn't very impressive. He actually praised Aristotle as much as he praised the Quran. So it's quite clear that, I mean, I don't want to like say, we don't know for sure whether he got money from Saudi, but like obviously he never converted to Islam. Like what kind of excuses? Oh, my family is Christian, so I don't want to like, what? Like that doesn't even make sense, like his excuse. But yeah, he refused to comment when Pete emailed him. Pete showed me the email. He was really hoping before this guy dies, he'll like, you know, set this to rest and come clean that the Quran, there's nothing impressive about the Quran. I mean, the fact there's only one scientist that everyone quotes.
That's what I'm saying, just the one.
Like red flag, hello, one guy. Like where's the other thousands of scientists that are like claiming the Quran is and there's another guy who I'm deeply grateful to that made a blog called Quranic Spotlight, and he went into great detail of how the embryology basically copied Galenic embryology, 7th century Greek. And Muhammad didn't even come up with his own embryology. He was just coding what was available at the time.
Exactly. That's why, you just see it for what it is once you get out. It's like, like that was all available to him at the time.
Yeah, and which is why now you have Hamza Soitis and these guys that are now moving past the scientific claims, and they're trying something else. The problem is, one by one, all of the claims are falling down. Like first it was, the scientific thing. Now it's like the preservation is falling apart. The preservation claim is falling apart. The Arabic claim is just weak in itself because nobody can really confirm it. So what they have to say is the only people, what I was told was, okay, well, you can't understand Arabic, but the people back then could, and they thought it was a miracle, so you should think it's a miracle too.
Exactly.
It's like, what? But that doesn't even make sense, because people today can see the mistakes in the Quran. Like Arabic speakers can see, even academics can see the signs of copy paste errors. They can see the signs where even like Hassan Radwan has beautifully shown how even Muslim theologians like tafsir, in the tafsir, they're puzzled by the language. It doesn't seem to make proper sense, right? Like some of the sentences in the Quran are malformed. So the Muslims have to come up with a way of making it make sense by like, even they're like, this is weird. That's not how you talk in Arabic, right? And
it's not.
Yeah, so when Muslims have that issue, then you have the Sana manuscript that you can see, like with the ultraviolet radiation, the pretext that was wiped out, and you can see that it changed. The text changed, and this was like probably a companion codex. It was a folio that common people couldn't afford. This was like the copy found in the mosque of Sana, so like more and more evidence I think is coming up. And for me, it was Alexander the Great, the Syriac romance, how it was like point for point exactly the same as this made up story. That made me lose a lot of faith and question a lot of things. I just think that piece by piece is falling apart, and I'm so happy to see that you were able to leave Islam. How long has it been for you now?
It's been like I got out of the marriage. It's almost 4 years now. It's 2017, and and then I guess 3 years that I left Islam. It took me a while. Yeah, I just didn't even let myself think about it for a while. But it's crazy. Like it's a whole different, like, diluted way of viewing the world. Like you have a whole different outlook on everything. So it's really like a cult in that way. Like you're seeing things that aren't there.
Absolutely. Do you want to add any final words or any advice to maybe other women who were in a similar situation as you were in, or anyone in general? Any final words you'd like to add?
I don't know. I just I appreciate everybody's support. I think the more people that come out and speak out, the better. I see it growing so quickly, even just over the past year that I've been dealing with ex-Muslims and these kind of things. So I think, if I had been aware of an ex-Muslim movement back before I converted to Islam, I don't know if I would have dove in the way I did. So I think it's important for us to just be very vocal if it's safe. And I feel like us living in a safe country, like we kind of owe it to the people who aren't able to. That I can't imagine living in a Muslim country and just having to fake it and not believe any of it. It must be agonizing. So, I feel for you guys, and I think we should just speak out for their sake as well.
Wonderful. Well said. So again, those of you who are new here, please do subscribe to the channel, thumbs up the video, share the video with others as well, so that more people can see it. I am trying my best to get back into things and be more active. Obviously, life is crazy with kids and work and everything, so activism is a challenge to keep it going. And I want to say thank you to all of my supporters, members of the channel, those who were supporting me financially. Especially, money is never easy to come about, so for those of you who are donating and continue to support me, thank you so much. Thank you to the admins who are here today. John Stopman, you're the best. Keep it up. Thanks for keeping the chat clean. And, we want Muslims to be able to come and listen and engage without, hateful, dirty comments. And that's I think, the type of community that I'm trying to grow. And Debbie, appreciate you, telling us about this. I know it's difficult for sure to talk about, openly. Hey, I was dumb. I went through, like, I know you feel kind of like, how could I have done this? Sometimes it boggles your mind. Like, how could I have fallen for this, right?
Oh my gosh. So many times I would just be like, what were you thinking? Like, what did you think? How did you think anything good could come out of that decision, But, and people randomly be like, what were you thinking? I'm like, I know. I'm working that out. Like, I'm writing a book now, and it's like really therapeutic for me to kind of go through and write out the different stages of basically my indoctrination, right? So it's actually therapeutic for me to do that. So it's like, nice. I'm writing for myself as much as anybody else.
When do you think the book will be ready?
I'm hoping by next year I can have things published. So just
awesome.
Yeah.
So when you do get to that point, you should come back on the channel and we can talk about the book. It'd be good way to get it out, get the word out.
Yeah, thanks.
And definitely appreciate sharing your story, especially some of the more personal, difficult details to talk about, being a first wife and a second wife relationship. That's tough to talk about. And it's important that people know that this is quite possible as a Muslim woman, that you could end up in a situation like this, and the spiritual abuse will be used against you.
Yep.
You will be told this is the Islamic way, just like Mormons are. Actually, Mormons, I don't know if Mormons do polygamy anymore, but the cults out there or the religious groups that still do polygamy, they use religious indoctrination to try to convince the women that, oh, this is good for you, God loves you, and this and that. And it's the same story, right? Like men using religion to control women. And so definitely appreciate that. That was tough to talk about. And yeah, for those of you who are just joining, again, it's over, but do check out the stream's going to be live later. It'll be on Spotify and all of your podcast platforms as well. Do check out Debbie's channel, and she's also on Twitter. So those are the two places you can find her. And once again, thank you, everyone. And we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.